Hopefully you've had some time to practice with your selection tools a bit. We're going to look at the Properties panel in both Photopea and Photoshop. So the Properties panel is, you can see it on Photopea, there's a little pro. If you can't find a panel, remember you always go to the Window menu and Properties, and same thing in Photoshop, Window menu, Properties, or Find It. Mine's already open over here. They look similar. There's two sliders. Photoshop has more features on this, of course, but the density of the mask will actually be helpful for you if you're trying to touch up the mask. So we'll go over those. And then remember, Photoshop has this fancy selected mask that we can go into. So I can click on here and go into select a mask and continue working on this, which makes things a lot easier to deal with. I can also invert it, which flip-flops it from this button on the Properties panel. We do not have that button in Photopea, but on either of these, I can still invert the mask, which basically means make the black white and the white black by clicking on the mask and pressing Control-I. You can do that on either program. So Control-I inverts the mask, but you got to be clicked on the mask to do it. Fun fact, Control-I, if you are not clicked on it, does that. It does this weird invert the colors thing. See on the picture of the plane there? So that means you clicked on the wrong thing. And now I've got all kinds of like crazy things happening down here that I have no idea what I did. But oh my, so many smart filters that I've added on. Whoopsie. Okay, now we're back to normal. So why would I want to mess with density? Well, in Photoshop, probably you won't, because you've got select a mask and you can go in here and mess with it and put it back out to a layer mask. In Photopea, though, this would be a way to make it easier for you to fix if you stopped at the end of a class period or whatever and you needed to work on this some more. So I'm going to click on my airplane mask, and then now I'm going to pull that density back. So what that does is, again, it lets me see those areas of the plane that I didn't get already. So remember, like I said last time, I could then take my lasso, for example, and lasso certain areas that then I could paint on in the mask to bring those parts back, you know, the parts that I didn't get the first time. So any of those parts that I didn't get on my first attempt, I can go ahead and do that. See, if I go up, I'm missing some of those parts. And then I can take my white paintbrush, I'm clicked on the mask, so it's only going to let me paint in the areas that are selected. And then there we go. So we're starting to paint some of that in, and I can go and look and see now we've got a little bit. I can press Control-D. Oops. My bad. Don't know what I did there. There we go. And then deselect. And then again, I can go back, pull this down again, take my hand tool and scoot this over. Oops, I didn't click the hand tool first and started moving stuff around. But anyway, and then you can go through and continue to touch up. I just totally messed that up. So anyway, but just remember, once you've put it on a mask, you've got to be clicked on the mask, and then you're going to have to use a paintbrush. And you need to be careful. Like right now, I've got a fuzzy paintbrush. That's a bad idea because the edges of my plane are now going to be fuzzy, and I don't want that. That looks goofy, right? We don't want edges of the plane to be fuzzy. That shouldn't be happening, right? So if you're seeing that fuzz, you just want to go with a hard brush around the edges to sort of fix that fuzziness. Now, I'm also zoomed in a lot right now. Like if you look down here in the corner, I'm zoomed in 200%. When you're zoomed in 200%, things are just going to be blurry a little bit, and that's just something that you have to deal with. So this is the density button, and we can adjust things for that. Now, I want to show you another lasso, and I'm going to use it in conjunction with pulling this density back on here. Okay, now if you've already fixed your plane, just bring in another copy, and let's do some of this maybe together using another copy of your plane, or duplicate the layer and delete the mask. Okay, so let's go over an additional selection tool of the lassos. If you click and hold your lasso, there is a lasso called the Polygonal Lasso tool, which lets us select polygon shapes. Polygons are, you know, multi-sided shapes, like an octagon is a polygon, right? So I'm going to zoom up here, and these are long straight pieces. So polygons have long flat pieces. So anytime you have long flat pieces, your polygon tool is not a bad, your Polygon Lasso tool is not a bad tool. It works based on you click and then you let go and move your mouse and click again and then let go and move your mouse. I'm going to do it out here just in nowhere. It's like I click one time and it's like you put down a push pin on a bulletin board and you have a rubber band, right? And so when I put that down, now I got my rubber band and it's like, where am I going to click to put down another push pin? And then down another push pin and down another push pin. See how as I'm clicking each time, it's doing that, right? And then you want to close it back up. You want to get back to the beginning. If you can't get exactly back to the beginning, you can double click close to the beginning and it will connect it. And then that makes your selection. Okay? So I'm going to press Control D to delete. Now, if you click, 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 and you're like, oh, I messed up, you can hit backspace and then roll your mouse back. And so you can, if you mess up, you can backspace. So a lot of people really like using the Polygonal Lasso, especially if you've got things that have long straight pieces. So this wing here. Now remember, I'm not really going to be selecting it because I've already put it on a layer mask here, right? But I have this density turned down for the moment so I can see. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to draw with my polygon tool. And I'm going to try to get this wing, like so. There, right? And then, turn this up, I'm going to take my white paintbrush, so I need to flip these to put white on top, make sure I'm clicked on my mask, and then paint. And then we painted back in that part, right? And I'm going to press Control D. That worked out pretty well, right? And so I could continue my process here to try to get some of these other parts. And remember, you can, you can go ahead and get a bunch of parts at once. You don't have to add them along the way. I don't know what I'm doing here. I keep clicking on the wrong things. Okay, so let's go over here. Scoot this over. And I'm going to take my Polygon Lasso, and then we'll go, let me look at my density here. Okay, I'm missing that. I'm missing both of these parts down here. So I'm going to go here, and then out, and then back in. And again, just double click if you can't find where you started, and make sure you're on add to selection so you can keep adding in more parts. And let's say I want to go ahead and grab this part. There's not as much to this wing down here. And I'm just going to double click close to where it begins because I have no idea where the beginning part of it was. Okay, that looks good. There's some areas I'm going to have to get rid of in there, huh? All right, so we got those. And now I'll take my white paintbrush and I'm just painting in those areas. So we get those pieces that are missing. Okay, and I'll pull that density back and take a look again. Press Control D. Oops. I'm adding bookmarks. You have to be careful if you're not clicked in the right place and you press Control D. It'll try to add a bookmark to your browser. Okay, so there we go. That's looking pretty good. I have a few little areas that are missing, and I know where they're at, so I'm not going to turn the density too far down. I'm just going to come over here now and paint on the mask without having any selections. So like here, I know I was missing some areas. And then in here, I'm going to switch this to black and use a smaller brush. I'm going to get rid of some of the sky that somehow I accidentally put in there. And I'm probably getting rid of too much here. The fun thing is, most of the time, people don't know what you started with, so they really don't know what was there in the first place. And depending on how big this is going to be, probably no one's going to notice anyway. All right, I'm going to switch these again. I think I'm missing, yeah, a little bit right back here. Okay. There we go, that's better. I'm going to press Control 0, and let's turn the density all the way up now. There we go. So you know what? That's actually a pretty good selection. So, like I said, it's not perfect in Photopea. You have to kind of go about it sort of a roundabout way, but I could do this exact same way in Photoshop. I mean, you can pull down your density and make changes exactly the same way. So let's just go ahead. I'll pop in here into Photoshop, pull my density down on that layer mask. Make sure you're on the right layer, of course. Take a look and see if there's anything that's missing. I actually did a pretty good job on this one. I can't complain too much about this one. But if I did have an area that was missing, again, actually I'm missing, I don't know if that's actually part of it or not, but we'll pretend it is. So I'm going to take my Polygon Lasso, click and hold. Polygon Lasso, make sure it's on add to selection in case I need to add additional parts. Be sure you're zoomed up close. And then I'm going to go out here, around that part, and then connect it. There it is. Okay, take that white paintbrush, paint in there, and then Control D, and then turn your density up so you can check it. And there it goes. It looks good. Okay. All right, so using the properties density slider changes how much you can see. It's almost like the transparency of that layer mask, but it will allow you to see if you are missing parts, and then if you pre-select those parts, paint in those areas by painting on that mask. Okay? All right, so that is using the properties panel and using the density slider to refine your layer masks.